how can real estate transform your wealth building journey? How do your core values inform your career trajectory and your personal mission? Welcome to the Investing Teacher Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and my mission is to help middle income earners like teachers learn how to invest wisely and build financial freedom, even in uncertain times. We're here to share our thoughts and opinions. For actual financial advice, please seek the services of a professional financial advisor. Today's investor is Cody Stephenson. Cody is a realtor, blogger, podcaster, gym owner, retired hockey player, but not a retired coffee drinker. Love that. You can connect with Cody on LinkedIn, on Instagram at Cody Stephenson 214, or at his website, coffeewithcody.beehive.com. Cody, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to talk investing?
Absolutely, Tim. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you've got a lot going on, so let's jump right into it. Let's start with story time, Cody. What first convinced you to adopt an investing mindset and become more intentional in your investing practices?
Yeah, this is an easy one for me. It was in 2018 when I was a personal trainer and didn't know anything else. I had some clients that were paying very high money to pay for a personal training gym. And I started talking to these clients, and they basically informed me, hey, there's another world outside making money per hour. And these guys happen to be realtors. And then they happened to give me a book one day called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I would say it's not an understatement to say that my world exploded. There was new ideas that I didn't know existed before. And so as far as the investing mindset, I didn't know it existed prior to that book and prior to these people that I stumbled upon as my clients that were willing to invest a little bit of energy into me and tell me, hey, look, there's things that you can do to do more than come to the gym and train us. You can flip the switch and become that. So eventually that basically is what led me down into getting into real estate and becoming a realtor, was because of the heavy influence of these guys that were doing very well, probably 10 years my senior, had very attractive lifestyles. So I thought, I've got to do a little bit of what you're doing. And now here we are 5 years later, doing a lot more of what they were doing 5 years ago. So that's what it really started with. But if you remember one thing about what I said just there, it's the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's the game changer in 2018 when I read that.
Yes, Robert Kiyosaki, right?
Yep.
Make your money work for you. It's a whole different mindset. Okay, well, that book, it's great to hear that was one title that really changed the game for you in a profound way. That and that connection with those clients. Thank you for sharing that. Now, let's talk about this recent move that you and your wife have made in Abbotsford, BC, Canada. You've opened a new gym called the Warehouse Gym Company. Why did you make a move in this direction, and what do you love about the industry?
Well, this was something that my wife and I were going to be doing. I would say, if not now, it would have been a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when it was inevitable. It's something that I've always been a part of. It's something that, growing up, my family was pretty heavy into the fitness world. So it's something I'm very comfortable and familiar with. I mean, as of 5 years ago, I know a heck of a lot more about fitness than I do real estate. Of course, that's changed since then. But this is something I've always been very passionate about. It's something that kind of shaped who I am as a kid growing up. Training for hockey and doing that athletic stuff. So it was, I would say, inevitable that we were going to do this. And this was going to kind of be a 1A, 1B with real estate / the gym. And my wife got very involved in it as well. And then she started her own private practice as a trainer, did very well with it, and got to the point where she couldn't do any better with it unless we had a headquarters. So she'd be driving all over the place, training people out of their home gyms and renting gym space. And then if we're talking about investments, we had to invest in something to get a greater return than was currently gotten. And then we got an opportunity for the current space that we're now leasing. It was available. And we looked at each other one day and said, you know what, this is the gym that we basically have dreamed about, that's available right now. And we can build it now, or we can watch somebody else do it, because this space is the perfect space to build out exactly what we inevitably are going to do eventually. And so the timing of it is, it's not the ideal timing of it. I wish that the timing was a bit different, but it was kind of forced on our hand there because, like I said, if we didn't take that space and invest into it, somebody else would have. and we'd be watching somebody else do what we're now doing. And, we're very confident in our knowledge of the industry, and we feel that we can do it better than what we believe would have been there in its place. So to contribute something that we were confident in and the service that we can provide out of a headquarters is something that the opportunity was presented, and we just couldn't pass it up. So we kind of pivoted as far as what we thought our projected timelines would be, and went into it because it's something that we've both been passionate about for a long time. And when opportunity presented itself, it was just too good not to go there. And basically, that's a long story short. I can talk your ear off about the process for a long time. Like it took us over 2 years to get to where we are now, but I mean, it's phenomenal. We don't regret doing it. But yeah, like I said, there's a long story there. There's a short version.
For anyone watching in the Abbotsford area, Cody, tell us briefly about the services you offer. I believe the focus really is on personal training, right?
Yep, that's right. So our bread and butter is one-on-one personal training. And actually right now, Saturday mornings, we do group fitness. It's group fitness strength classes. But what we do and what we built the facility to do is one-on-one coaching. And we were just chatting before we started here about franchise gyms and different models there. What we see as the best place to invest in health and wellness is the private one-on-one coaching sector. And it's a growing sector as opposed to, I mean, we mentioned franchise models such as the Steve Nash franchise that basically went under because they couldn't sustain what they were doing because it was a large box model where people were paying a low fee for very low service, whereas we're charging a high fee for a specialized high service. So that's kind of, I'd say it's very different than a traditional gym model because it's appointment based one on one. And that's where we feel people are much more willing to invest their dollars in today, as opposed to even 5 years ago, before I got into real estate. I would say the game has changed significantly, largely due to COVID and the lockdowns, and the priority on health and fitness and where people are putting their money has really changed, I'd say, especially in health and wellness.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are different philosophies and approaches to fitness, and I know I and my wife don't see it exactly the same way. She's a huge fan of the personal training space and invests a lot of money to have people tell her what to do each day. And I will concede this: there's no better way to get full value for your time in the gym than to have someone with you who is pushing you, right? Because we've all seen the people sort of wandering around the gym in the gyms that are unmanned, sort of an anytime fitness kind of model, who are spending half their time on their phone, and they're just not getting the same value. So you're going to have that, having that coach, that personal trainer beside you, the value is going to be unmatched. I can concede that in a second. Let's talk about real estate also in the Abbotsford area. Cody, how do your values of service, integrity, and urgency inform your work in this space?
Yeah, I'll tell you off the bat, my values when I first started 5 years ago were service and integrity. And then just last year, I added this third one of urgency. So I'll go through the three here. So the service in relation to what we were just talking about in fitness, if service isn't first, I would say, especially in an industry like real estate as an agent, then you get caught up in chasing your next deal, chasing your next commission check. And when I get together with other realtors, the conversation is not about service provided and new ways to help clients. It's about how big was your last commission check. And that drove me nuts. It drives me crazy. I don't feel that that has any amount of integrity involved. If you're thinking about your check first and your client second, it's got to be reversed. It's client first, your check second. You'll get paid eventually, right? It's the Jim Rohn quote. If you do more than you paid for, eventually you get paid for more than you do. And that's the service mentality, and it's the same in real estate as it is in the gym for us. And the quote that I try to live by in real estate and in the gym as well, we're going to have this quote plastered up in our gym. Actually, it's by Napoleon Hill, who wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. It's follow the habit of rendering more service and better service than that which is expected of you. And that's basically how I try to model what I do in the gym and with my clients in real estate. I'm trying to provide more service than is expected of me, and then better service than is expected of me. And in return, as I've found and other people before me have found, is you do get compensated for that. It's not right away. It's not the fastest way, but it is the best way. And I would say that as long as you can do that with, a sense of, what's the word I'm looking for? If you're genuine about it, if you're genuinely trying to serve your client or your customer or your student, whoever it is, then that sense of integrity is kind of built in. If you think of the service first, the rest falls into place. And then at the end of the day, you do get compensated fairly, more than fairly. And then the reason I added urgency into all this is because I would say this one more specific to real estate is, as somebody's agent, you are relied upon to provide this service, and you, as the common myth in real estate is that realtors get to choose their own hours. And it's just not the case, because when I'm serving a client, unfortunately, those clients' needs come before mine. And if they're trying to write an offer on a property that's hot on the market, there might be other people who want it. Well, I need to be urgent in my dealings with that, um, and make sure it happens. And so if I'm in the middle of a deal or a transaction, my phone is on. And for the sake of my wife listening, I'm sorry, but I have to have my phone on during dinner. Like, that's the reality of it. And it's interesting. It's an interesting industry in that sense, where as an agent, you do have to, like we're talking about, you have to serve your client first, and you have to be urgent, because I've seen people get left out of great deals and great investments because their agent wasn't urgent and didn't return a call fast enough, or had their phone on silent, or decided to leave their phone at home when they took a 7-day vacation. And it's a kind of a, it's a hard one to balance. And I know agents have various opinions on this, but I added that value of urgency into what I do, because I need to know that my clients know that they can rely on me for whatever their need is. And the needs for this client over here is not going to be the same for this client over here. So it's a very, as long as you start with the service, the integrity is built in, so long as it's genuine. And then if you're providing the best service, it has to be urgent. And it's the lack of urgency in the industry that I found that really kind of made me want to promote that as one of my values as well. Again, I can riff on that for a long time. I have a lot to say about that in our industry, but that's the story of my values there.
To me, it just speaks of commitment, of
100%.
hunger and desire. And when a client realizes, okay, Cody is completely in my corner and focused, I don't think people always get that sense from their realtor, but that's what I'm hearing from you, and I know that's what you're striving for. Cody, I've been spending a little bit more time on, let's call it Finance X, or the investing corner of X lately, and I know that's not your favorite platform, but a debate that I keep seeing there is this age-old debate of rent versus own. I know there's a lot that can be said here, but speaking a little bit, I've read a little bit of your own experience, your own pathway. Which relationship with home ownership offers a faster path to building wealth today, would you say?
I would definitely say, probably not what most realtors would say. I would say the faster path to building wealth is renting. Prices have gone so high, and it's incredibly expensive to own real estate. So if you're thinking 12 months from now, I want to be, much richer than I currently am. If I'm being honest, and if I'm voicing what I've experienced with clients of mine, I would say to buy real estate in the next 6 to 12 months, will probably have less cash than you do now, because you've got to put your down payment, you've got your property transfer tax, you've got your mortgage interest payments. It might be an insured mortgage. You've got your, I got my property tax notice right here that I got to pay by July 1st.
Right? Yeah.
Or you can rent somewhere for probably much less than you would be paying your mortgage. You can save your down payment money, invest it elsewhere. You don't have to worry about property tax. You don't have to worry about strata fees if you're in a strata. So if we're talking fast, if we're talking speed, buying today is not the fastest way to get wealthy. But I want to make sure that we also talk about, if you want to get wealthy and sustain it, and if we want to come back and visit this 5 years from now, there is no comparison. Buying real estate today will result in a much higher net worth, and that is non-negotiable. That, like, if we're talking speed, by the end of this year, you want to have as much money as possible. I would say keep some of your money. If you want to be as rich as possible 5 years from now, well, what a great time to invest in real estate. So it's going to take work, it's going to take money, and your cash might be tighter at times than you'd prefer. But 5 years from now, you're going to be laughing. And I can pretty much guarantee that. I say that with 100% certainty. Long term, if you own real estate, that will be your ticket to financial freedom that renters just won't have access to. And that's whether we're talking about high interest rates, low interest rates, high payment, low payment, whatever it is, there's no comparison to owning real estate. So speed is not what I talk about with my clients when they're looking to buy or they're deciding, should I buy now or whatnot. I'd say, well, let's talk about where do you want to be in 6 months? Like, how can you survive this year with less money, or can't you? Because if you're tight as it is and you're scraping by and you don't know if you can make your first mortgage payment, well, let's be honest, maybe you shouldn't do that. But if you can make it work for a short term and you see the long term benefit, then by all means, that is a excellent decision to buy real estate. So I try not to just go, yes, it's always a great time to buy. Yes, this is the best decision for everybody in every situation. I just don't believe that.
Yeah.
So there's definitely benefits to both, but short term, I mean, it's expensive. Long term, you get the higher return. You invest more, you get a higher return. If you invest less, you get to keep your money, but you don't get the long term.
That was a great breakdown, Cody. Thank you so much. I know in 2015, when my wife and I got married, we had a decision to make. We were renting at the time, and we thought, are we willing to be house poor for a certain amount of time? So we bought a detached home in the Clayton Heights area of Surrey, and wow, was that ever the right decision? So here in this Vancouver market, well, I'm saying Vancouver, Greater Vancouver, Abbotsford,
Yep.
Lower Mainland, and you were careful in defining that can you actually do this? That's not a guarantee, but if you can, it's usually going to turn out well for you. Thank you for joining us, investors. If you're finding value here, give this video a like. You're a realtor, Cody, and I get the sense if you haven't invested in property yet, I'm sure that's in the works. So in your view, what are the biggest wins that come from real estate investing?
The biggest wins are, we can talk about financial aspects and then other aspects too, but financially, I don't think you can beat the return on your investment over the long period of time. Your appreciation and value, if you own real estate in Vancouver, Greater Vancouver, Fraser Valley, is going to be unmatched, I think. In I don't know if there's anything else you can invest in that will have a greater return on money invested over the next, say, decade. I don't think it can compare. So that from a financial standpoint, even if you feel like you're house poor for a year or 2 years, I mean, give yourself five. And like I said before, I'm pretty certain you'll be laughing. So I just don't think it can be beat, and I don't think that's about to change. Like I mentioned before, prices are high, but I'm fairly certain that they're not going to get any lower. The affordability crisis is not going to get better, so I think we need to redefine what we determine is affordable. And I mean, I'll bring up Jim Rohn again, and he's my favorite all-time speaker. I mean, when you talk about affordability, he used to say, it's not expensive, you just can't afford it, or you're not making enough. Like, there's ways to reframe how you look at it, because I think that's entirely necessary right now. It's hard to afford it, but it is the way that it is, and that's not going to change. So I think the way that maybe my generation is looking at this today needs to shift a little bit, because that return that you can get over a long period of time is not going away. Like, it's a harder starting point than maybe it was 10 years ago, but the return is still the same. And then from a non-financial standpoint, I mean, there's nothing like owning your own home. You get to do whatever you want with it. There's pride of ownership. I mean, it's a real thing. You just feel good when you walk through your own front door. And I mean, I experienced that. It's just a different feeling, and I don't think that should be discredited too. So it's not just a financial investment. We can talk about dollar returns all day long, but if you talk about return on your investment, there's also your lifestyle, how you feel about yourself, how you view yourself, and how much confidence you can carry yourself, what you're able to contribute based on what you feel you've accomplished. And I think that's a huge element too for young people in my generation. The sense of accomplishment that people get when they buy that first home. I've helped tons of first time buyers, and the accomplishment that they feel is just, it's just awesome. The excitement, the hurdle, they got family members telling them, oh, you could never do this, it's too expensive, you can't do it, and then they do it, and that's just unbelievable. I've seen
Yeah.
people do it like for the first time, like the first family members in a long generation of renters that have bought their first property after grandparents, parents, brothers, sisters, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. And then they do it. It's incredible. And they will change their family tree as a result. And their kids will do it because they did it. And so that's far more than the return financially. There's so much that you can get in purchasing real estate and holding it.
Yeah, that's a great point. There are so many wins aside from just the investor or the financial aspect. You described those really, really well. And wow, I'm just thinking about the moments of victory and the wins, Cody, that you get to celebrate. Thinking about that person in a long line of renters who is now buying their first piece of real estate. On the same theme, right now, it's no secret that mortgage rates are pretty high, especially compared to where they were 2 years ago. We've got rumors of Bank of Canada cuts possibly on the way throughout the rest of the year, maybe a couple of them. We're not sure what that will look like. As an investor, thinking as an investor, do you take more of a wait and see approach, or are you more of the mindset of it's always the right time to invest?
I don't know if I'd say it's always the right time to invest, but I definitely wouldn't be a wait and see kind of guy either. People have
Mhm.
been burned. I had clients in 2020, and they were my clients still in 2023, and they were humming and hawing and saying, "Oh, let's wait for rates to come down, or let's wait for prices to come down." And that was 2020. And look what happened in 2021, beginning of 2022. I mean, they literally have to spend an extra up to like $500,000 to get the same type of property they were looking at. So if you can and you want to, and like if the situation aligns like we talked about before, then absolutely it is not a bad time. So the high mortgage rates, I wouldn't say should dampen anybody's spirit of investing in real estate. I don't think it's a factor. I think your personal scenario and your personal budget, your income, your expenses, and those ratios, that's your factor to consider, because we can't control the interest rates. The Bank of Canada will do what it's going to do despite anything that we do. So the investing strategy, I don't think, should be influenced by the rates. Where we're currently at, you mentioned, we're likely to get rate cuts, maybe even by this coming week. There's a Bank of Canada announcement on Wednesday, and there's a lot of brokers out there that feel that we're going to get a 0.25% decrease in rates. And if that happens, the market will pop. The price of real estate will go up. It's not an if, it's a how much. It will happen. So if rates are high, what a great time to buy. Just like, I mean, that famous guy named Warren Buffett, when other
Yeah.
people are fearful is probably the time that you should be investing. And he's not wrong. I mean, he's the most successful investor to ever live, probably. So he's probably got a good thing to say here and there. So I would advise people to not wait until rates decrease unless you have to. Like, if you can't get qualified for a mortgage, then by me, that's no problem. Like, you're not going to lose because you wait until you can afford it or you save up a little bit more. Like, you do what you need to do. But if you're willing and able and you have the knowledge and the funds, then you're doing yourself a disservice, I think, by waiting.
My wife and I invested in a pre-sale 2 years ago, Cody, and it's finally coming to completion sometime this summer. And so, of course, 2 years ago, rates were about half or less of what they are now. And now we're just wondering, what's that going to look like when we sit down to write that mortgage? It's going to be interesting. And I'm sure a lot of other people are in a similar position, but we're just taking that long-term view.
Yeah.
And I just have peace about where we'll be in 5 or 10 years, as you said earlier. The podcast, Cody, is aimed at teachers and other middle income earners who typically have very stable salaries and maybe they don't see themselves as active investors. So we've talked about real estate, maybe keep in mind other forms of investing. Generally speaking, do you think it's too late, or is it ever too late to get into the investment game?
I don't think it's too late to get into the investing game. I think you have to consider the amount of risk that you're willing to take on and the time horizon that you feel like you have to work with, depending on how close to retirement you are. I would say the number one thing that I hear about, I mean, teachers in particular. I mean, my dad's a teacher, you know that. I hear a lot about the industry of teaching. I think that teachers know they have a pension, but I don't think very many teachers know what kind of fund their pension is being invested in. What do you know about your pension fund? I bet most teachers know very little about it. So
Right.
I would advise them, why don't you find out, where is that money being invested right now? How is it growing? And how much do you get paid when you do retire? Do you know what the dollar figures actually are? Like, do you know what the tax implications are? Like, how is your cash flow going to be when you retire compared to today? And are you satisfied with it? And then from there you can adjust. So I don't think it's ever too late to get educated and learn more about it, because I think the more you know about it, the easier it is to make the numbers work in your favor. And then as far as investing into not real estate but other investments or what have you, I mean there's a guy named Brian Buffini. He's a big real estate guy. He's the largest business coach in America, and he actually think he got this from Jim Rohn as well, the 70-10-10-10 principle of living off 70% of your income, saving 10% of your income, as in saving in cash, investing 10%, and then giving 10%. I think that is something that you can do no matter where you're at any point in time, no matter where you're at in your career. And this doesn't include your pension. So if you've got money that's withheld from you for your pension, then you still would invest an additional 10% and you would save an additional 10%. You would give an additional 10% and live off the remaining 70. So I wouldn't count your pension fund as that 10%, because that's something that you don't have control over that, from my understanding. So I would find out, what is it going to look like, and then decide for yourself, kind of match it with what you're hoping to do. And then that 70-10-10-10 principle of taking your paycheck and splitting it up into those categories, I feel is a very smart move for anybody, regardless of where they're at. And then the 10% of investing, I mean, there's a lot of different places you can put it. You can do very low risk mutual funds that are pretty easy to set up through your bank. You can do ETF in index fund investing, which is pretty easy to understand and to follow, pretty low risk as well. So one of those, I would say, anybody can do relatively easily, even in the short term, if you don't have a long runway to work with. So those are the things I would say anybody should consider, regardless of what career or where they're at in their career.
I love the piece of advice that you shared about just improving your investment literacy, just getting to know the terms, the language, the landscape. And I think, Cody, you're speaking to the right audience there, because so many educators that I know, and of course, other middle income earners who are on those stable salaries, you're right, they're just ignoring their pay stub. They know nothing about where their pensions are going. They know nothing about, well, I'm sad to say they're not even aware of how much is withheld off their paycheck. So
Yeah.
we've got to get our head in the game. And that's the first step, I think, to becoming a little more involved and actually making some investment decisions. It's interesting. You mentioned Brian Buffini. I used to listen to him a while ago. Dave Ramsey is another name that I'm sure you're familiar with. And he calls for even 15% in addition to your pensions.
Yeah.
So I know that's maybe mind blowing for some people to think about
Yeah.
after all those funds are withheld. But that's the advice from some of the best known voices out there. As you look back on your investing journey, what's one piece of advice that you wish you could share with your 25-year-old self? And I'm very mindful that 25 years old is not that far removed from where you are, but
Yeah.
looking back, what would you advise or change?
So 5 years ago is when I got my real estate license and started in my real estate trading services career. And so those guys that I met at the gym, like I mentioned at the beginning, who were willing to spend some time with me, who were also realtors, gave me, I would say, some pretty realistic expectations of what to expect in my first year, second year, third year as I transitioned into the industry. Told me what they did as they got started, what a typical realtor does to get started. And they said, you can expect to do X amount. If you do this amount, then you are doing pretty good. Um, I would say, if I'm looking back and telling myself, I would say, don't listen to the expectations that they place on you, because here's what happened. I met the minimum expectation of what they said would probably happen. It's exactly what happened. They said, you know what, you probably won't make money for the first 6 months of your career. And guess what? I didn't. I didn't make money for the first 6 months. They said if you can do 6 to 10 deals in your first year, then that would be pretty successful. That'd be more than most realtors would do. And then guess how many deals I did in my first year? 6. And I met the minimum expectation of what other people placed on me. And so I put those numbers that they put in my head. These are people that I respect and admire. So I said, well, they said this, so I'm going to put that here in my head and I'm going to work off of that. And then that's exactly what happened. But I feel like I placed that ceiling on myself far too early. And I would say I thought too small. I should have thought bigger, and I should have invested more heavily into actually chasing it, instead of being content with, oh, they said that I might not make money, so it's okay if I'm not. Or they said that I would probably only do 6 deals, so it's okay that I don't do more. And I would say that's maybe the one thing. If looking back, I mean, it's only 5 years ago. I just turned 30, so what do I know at this point? But that's one thing. Probably I would change. Don't listen to expectations that other people set. I mean, set your own. That would be the number one thing.
Yeah, they're probably sharing those numbers in a way to be assuring or comforting
Yep.
or give you something safe to shoot for. But what I hear you say is dream bigger, dream bigger than perhaps the goals that others set for you. I won't say impose on you, but again, they're trying to give you that first step. Aim for
Yep.
2 steps, aim for
Yep.
3 steps, whatever that looks like. Well, as we start to land the plane here, Cody, you've got this blog that I've found fascinating. I'm a recent subscriber, but really enjoying the ride. And I'll try to put it up on the screen here while you speak to this. One of your recent posts, you had 30 pieces of advice after 30 years. And this one caught my eye. Do something worth writing about or write something worth reading. So say more about what you mean here.
Yeah, I would say I wish I remember where I first heard this. I don't know who said it. It wasn't. I didn't come up with this. I heard it somewhere on a podcast or Reddit or something like that. But it really stuck with me. Um, I would say it stuck with me because here's the context. There's about 5,200 realtors in the Fraser Valley. In the Fraser Valley, real estate board spans from Abbotsford is the furthest east. It goes out to Delta, so Surrey, Langley, Aldergrove, Abbotsford, and Mission. There's 5,200 realtors, and there's not that many transactions per realtor if you go and break that up evenly. So even if you do very, very well as an agent, you're a small little sliver blip in the large piece of the pie of what's going on. And the reality is I can kill it. I can be in the top 1% and nobody's going to write home about it. And it's not that I don't feel like it's a valuable service, but it's one that you can get from me or 5,000 other people. So I felt like there's something more that I can give that maybe is a little bit more unique to what I'm currently doing. And then last fall, I'll bring back to our gym. We waited so long before we can operate our gym, before we got our business license and our permit to operate. It took, like I said at the beginning, over 2 years. So we were waiting for a long time. So I was tired of waiting. Nobody's going to wait, or that's not important to wait for something to happen. And it's not that significant to do the same thing that 5,000 other people are doing at the same time. Albeit important, I understand the small transaction. It all adds up. It's very important. I value my clients, but I was thinking there's more that I can give here. I felt like I was sitting on my hands a little bit, so I decided to start writing this blog, which was I think last November. I started doing it, and I've always wanted to write a book. It's something that I've kind of had in my back pocket of one of my goals that I wanted to do at some point in time. And it was one of those, well, maybe I'll do it at some point. And there was nothing pressing that was making me do it besides the fact that I heard this quote and I was realizing, what am I doing that's going to leave a legacy? And at the moment, it was nothing. I was waiting for something to happen, and I was doing something that, yes, it's a valuable service, but it is not unique to me. When I stop doing it, the industry will march on and nobody's going to notice, and that's fine. But there's more that I can give, and I think it's to our own detriment to not try to do and contribute as much as we can. And I think I felt like I was doing myself a disservice by sitting on my hands and waiting and watching for things to happen. So that is my blog is the result of that. It's going to lead to my book that I plan on reading or writing, I should say. And then the gym that we built, I believe is truly exceptional. I believe it's an exceptional space that when people come in, they will notice, they will remember it. It is not the same as what you can experience elsewhere. So what I'm really trying to do at this point is both do something that people will take note, because I believe that it's my obligation to, and then write something because it's a goal of mine to have a book, to write a book, and I really enjoy it. And the feedback that I've got from this blog has been very cool. It's been awesome. I get emails every week after I send it out. Somebody will say something like, hey, you said something this really stood out for me. I didn't understand this about myself until I read this. It's been very cool to see and to hear. So I think that one is just something. If I'm not doing something in a day, well, at least I can be writing something that maybe a year from now somebody will read and go, hey. And the ripple effect. You know what the ripple effect is. Well, I think it's been calculated at some point by some brilliant person somewhere. Everybody affects about 10,000 people in their lifetime. It's a 5-figure number. And then every one of those people affects another 5-figure number. So your personal ripple effect is just enormous. And so to not try to expand that and be a positive ripple is something that I think it shouldn't be neglected. I think people they ought to do something that will contribute and leave a mark on as many people as possible. And that's why I'm doing the blog. I don't make any money from it at the moment. I'm doing it because I feel there's something that I can contribute to, and I also get a lot of enjoyment and fulfillment out of it.
I love the vision that you're sharing, Cody, and all of your work, whether it's the Coffee with Cody blog. And again, I strongly recommend listeners of the podcast to subscribe. Google that right now while you're thinking about it, and
It's on
pick
LinkedIn
up
as well.
on LinkedIn. Check it out, because Cody is focused on so much more than just fitness or just real estate. And it's really inspiring, Cody, and you're packing so much value. And there's a common theme of supporting others and serving others, and really, really appreciate that. So as we start to wrap up here, for those interested in your message, perhaps those in the Abbotsford area who are looking at finding or selling a property, or anyone else listening around the world, what are the best ways to connect with you and your work?
Yeah, you can find my website, codystephenson.ca, is where you can find all my real estate stuff. The gym website, warehousegymco.com, you can find out a lot about what we're doing there. I'm always on LinkedIn and Instagram. Best place to reach me directly is probably email. Email is my favorite method of communication. I get my clients on board with that early on. I say, don't text me, send me an email. So Cody at codystephenson.ca. I'm always open for dialogue. Email is my favorite. I think email is a vastly underutilized tool, but I use it a lot.
Sounds good, Cody. Again, thank you so much for sharing your time with the podcast today. It's been great to learn from you. You've definitely pushed my thinking. Investors, I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you decided to spend some of your day listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed the content you heard today from Cody Stephenson, make sure to connect with him at the places he just mentioned. In the meantime, keep investing, and I'll meet you next week right here on the Investing Teacher Podcast. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tim.